it isn't always important what the teacher says, it's what the student hears. And so you never know what's affecting a young person's life and what they're feeling and what they're hearing. And a simple gesture like a horn or a pat on the back or that needs to be played a little bit longer with real care and compassion will make the difference in someone that you never know. You just don't know.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. Are you planning to travel with your group sometime soon? If so, please consider my sponsor, Kaleidoscope Adventures, a full-service tour company specializing in student group travel. With a former educator as its CEO, Kaleidoscope Adventures is dedicated to changing student lives through travel, and they offer high-quality service and an attention to detail that comes from more than 25 years of student travel experience. Trust Kaleidoscope's outstanding staff to focus on your group's one-of-a-kind adventure so that you can focus on everything else. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Jake Walker and Colin Peters for their contributions to the show, and especially to all of you who are listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you know one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, and now help your students live up to the best that is in them.
Hi, Gary. Music. Thanks for joining me.
I'm glad to be here.
So, Gary, can you introduce yourself for the listeners? Tell them who you are.
Sure. My name is Gary Green, retired from the University of Miami about 7 years ago. But I taught high school band for 20 years and then into college and university level for about 30 years. So a little over 50 years of teaching. But I'm enjoying photography and my grandchildren and retirement now. Some work, but I'm enjoying my family.
Sure. Absolutely. So, Gary, let's start at the beginning. We'll kind of unwrap your tale here, going back all the way. So tell me, how did you get your musical start? What's your origin story?
Well, I don't think my story is an unusual one. I think it's pretty straight ahead. I grew up in a very, very small town in Oklahoma, just outside of Tulsa. The name of the town was Sapulpa. And there just happened to be in that town a man who was a fine educator and a band director who actually was the reason that I started in the band. In the early stages, it was an excitement thing. It was a thing that I wanted to be a part of a group of people that were doing things that I thought were attractive to a younger person. But it was a strange start. As my family, we weren't poor, and we always had plenty of food, and love was always there in the house, in the home. But I wanted to play the trumpet. And I went home and told my mother that they had come to school and they were talking about beginning a band. And I told them I wanted to play trumpet. And my mother said, well, you can't because we can't afford the rental. Now, imagine that. It must have been somewhere in the early 1950s. So the rental could not have been more than a couple of bucks a semester or even the academic year, I would guess. I really don't know, but that's a guess. And I was so disappointed because that was my chance to be a part of this thing that I wanted desperately to be a part of. So, and we started then in the 5th grade. And so went on to the 6th grade, and they asked again. And I went back to my mother and I said, I'd like to play the trumpet, and we need to pay for the rental. Excuse me. And of course she said, well, we don't have the money. We can't do it. So I was pretty despondent. But the band director at the time, the man's name was George Bright, knew of my story somehow. I couldn't tell you how he knew or why he knew, and it's far too long ago. But he knew. And he found out that I wanted to be, and he says, well, he called me and my mother in to see him in his office. And he said, I know you want to be in band, and the rental's not possible. Would you like to play? And he brought out this mellophone, an old mellophone, not pretty at all. And my heart just sank. And I thought, well, I don't think I want to do that, but it was my opportunity, so I took it, which led then, of course, to my playing the French horn. And that made all the difference in the world. I loved the horn, and I loved being a part of the organization. I stayed on that mellophone probably through the beginning. And when I was in middle school, junior high school, I changed over to they bought me a single French horn. And then when in high school, they bought me a double. So that's how I started in band. It was lucky that there was a man there that knew of my trouble and helped me begin. So I'm grateful for that. Was more than grateful.
All right, Gary. So how about what happened next? I guess the question I typically ask is, what was the moment that you knew you were going to go into music?
Oh, I think once I started playing, there was something inside of me that's difficult to describe, but there was a heat, a longing to know about something that I didn't really know about. And that's a big statement for a guy who's like, 10 years old. But, Mark, before that, when I was very young, 6, 7, 8 years old, I used to, my house, we lived on kind of a house that faced an alley, and behind our house was a smaller house. And they would get together in there. These guys would get together, local people in the community, and they would play fiddles and guitars, and they had an old beat up piano in there. And I can't remember exactly what instruments, but I would go over there. I'd hear the music and I'd go hang out in the house and just listen. And I can remember the feeling of hearing them sing gospel songs. With such reality. You, even when you're very young, when somebody's given you everything they got. When somebody tells you something, you just know. And so they would sing Western songs, I guess, but it was the gospel songs that I remembered, and the way they would play those fiddles and the way they would be so involved. So an early, and I believe, Mark, to this day, that is the seed of fire that has held me to this age of 79. I believe it, that's the thing that's held me together all these years, all those years ago, because it never goes out. Then I got in, when I got in school and we were in band. I loved trying to learn to play the instrument. I was pretty good at it. And they made sure that I had great equipment. Mr. Bright took really care with me and nurtured me in many, many ways, probably too many ways that I can tell you. But I think it wasn't so much. I remember one day we were in class, and we were in high school by this time, and we were doing Manzoni Requiem. Do you know that transcription of the Verdi Requiem, Manzoni Requiem? It's an old one. I mean, it's an old one. I mean, when I was in high school, it would have been in the late 50s. It's an old transcription, but I can remember playing that, and the horn part wasn't really that great, but I can remember the sound that was surrounding me, and I knew intuitively that there was something about this that was greater than what I intellectually realized. There was something more human about it. There was something more spiritual about it, and so those kinds of things when I was young have kept me going through all this time, through all the things I've done, actually.
So where did you go to undergraduate?
Well, I went to Oklahoma. I went to Central State University. I think now it's called University of Central Oklahoma. So it's gone through. So long ago. I mean, it's decades ago now. But that was Vietnam. That's when the war was raging. And the draft was there, and guys were leaving the States to go to Canada or someplace where the draft couldn't get them. And I was affected by that. And so I decided that that I needed to go serve. And so I enlisted. And I served 4 years, well, just short of 4 years, maybe 3.5 years. A little bit more than that. And it's not something that I would want to do again, but it is something I would do again. And it's something that I'm glad that I did, because for me, there was a question: did I really want to pay the price to be a musician? Did I really want to do that? And was it all consuming? And so I went to school, and I joined the Air Force, went to tech school or to basic training. And for various reasons, things that happened to me during the basic training, I was very clear that I wanted to be a musician, that I would spend my time in the Air Force, and I would do everything I could to serve the country in the way that I had intended when I went. But I knew when I got out that I was going to be a musician, and nothing was going to keep me from it. While I was stationed, maybe a year before I got out, I was stationed in Mountain Home, Idaho. And I had auditioned and made a band, in the early stages, as I mentioned, when they recruited me, I wasn't sure I wanted to be a musician, so I chose photography. I was in photographic intelligence, and that's where my love of photography first started. As a matter of fact, there was a time when I considered freelance photography and to become a photographer, but I knew I had to be a musician, and I'm still trying to be a musician. But that's where while I was there, I met my wife of now 53 years. And that lucky stroke has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. We have our children, and so much to be thankful for, and to understand our personal blessings. But when I got out of the service in Idaho, and the story could go forever, and it's not necessary. I was stationed in Mountain Home, which is not very far from Boise. And there was a school there. Boise State was there. And so they allowed me to work in the service at night and go to school during the day. So I did my last year of education, undergrad, at Boise State. Thank goodness they allowed me to do that. And I started teaching then after I was discharged.
So I was going to ask, were you playing in any Air Force ensembles?
No, as I mentioned, I auditioned, but that was early. That was 3.5 years earlier. You had to make a decision. What do you want to do? You want to be a paratrooper? You want to be a ground troop? What do you want to do? And I did audition and made it, but I decided that I was questioning was questioning whether I really wanted to do it. And so they offered me photography, and I took it. But then you don't choose to be an artist. You don't choose to be a musician. It chooses you. And once that happens, it's done.
Absolutely. So you finished up at Boise State, you were discharged, and you took your first teaching job. So let's talk, I have a lot of young band directors who listen to the show.
Yeah.
Do you remember those early years? What were your challenges and what was that?
I remember them like they were yesterday. And I tell you, while you're going through it, you question it. But when you have an opportunity to get removed from it far enough, you can observe and reflect on what actually happened. It's like photography. It's like painting. It's like composition. You can't really tell what you're doing till you're removed from it. You have to go through the pain of revealing it. But once it's revealed, then you have to stand away so you can examine the reality of the soul of it. So my first job was 1 through 6 vocal, and I loved it. And the reason why I did 1 through 6 vocal is because it was available when I was discharged, and I jumped on it. And I can't even begin to tell you how wonderful I thought that was. I can remember I had a 4th grade honor choir. I taught 1 through 6, and I decided 4th grade I'd have an after school choir, and it'd be all 4th graders, and we would meet and just do special stuff. And we sang Shenandoah. We did I'm a Little Duck. I mean, we did a lot of stuff, And you can talk about beauty and passion, but when I was younger, I could kind of kneel down and get down on their level. And I can remember looking at them right in their face, watching them and hearing them sing I'm a Little Duck. And the joy of that coming out of their whole body was more than I could explain in 100 years. I mean, it was joyous. I mean, it was just, I can still see it. I can still hear it. So it was a great experience for me, and I learned a lot about teaching. I mean, what did I know about teaching? You got a job and you go out to teach, and I mean, what are you going to do? How do you get your material? What do you do? And so I was given the opportunity to learn with kids that really wanted to do it. And all those years ago, every kid in the school took music. Everybody. I had my own music room. So every kid in the school would come to that. That doesn't happen anymore, but it did then.
Hey there. My name is Dr. Garrett Hope. I am a composer, coach, podcaster, and speaker. I've been focused on building my music business since 2014 and helping others build theirs since 2015. I want to tell you about the 2nd annual Ultimate Music Business Summit we are organizing. It'll take place early January of 2022. There will be dozens of presentations with highly actionable content, all of it available to you so you can start your business, grow your business, and ultimately make more money. Because here's the deal. Unless you earn all of your income from an employer, you are a self-employed small business owner. And if you want to do more than survive, if you want to grow your audience, or if you want to impact more people, you have to think and act like a business owner. And that means this summit is for you. This summit will give you real-world, not theoretical, strategies you can implement immediately. You don't need to be stuck with fear or living in your failures. I promise you, with all the teachers lined up, you will get something you've never thought of before. Even though building a business is hard, no one is promising it's easy. It is possible. You just need the right tools and strategies. Tickets for this virtual event will go on sale soon. To be the first in line and to get more information about the summit, presenters, and more, go to musicsummit.biz. That's musicsummit.biz and add your email to the list.
All right. So that first job, you were 1 through 6 the vocal. When was your first band gig?
I did that elementary school choir, vocal music for 1 semester. Then I got a job, the greatest job in the world. I mean, I taught in Weiser, Idaho. And you're going, where in the world is Weiser, Idaho? If you imagine Weiser, Idaho, and the south west corner of Idaho, where it's near Oregon, there's a big desert there called the Oahe Desert. And right just above the line, the state line, is Weiser, Idaho. And I don't know why I had the opportunity to go to Weiser and teach, but I did. And there was a man there. His name was Ford Smith. And Ford was the band director who had become the elementary school principal in Weiser. And this was my first band job. And I knew that if I could get that job and if I could get Ford to mentor me, I could have a great experience learning how to be a band director. And he did. And he taught me things like when to have band parent meetings and when not to have band parent meetings, and when to have extra rehearsals and when not to have extra rehearsals, and what to watch out for. And he was a great, great man. And I was so lucky that he was there. And the kids in Weiser were just terrific. I went back and had a reunion with those kids maybe 15 years ago. Yeah, maybe 15 years ago. And after being gone for all those years, and to see those guys and hear them talk about their experiences in band and just to hear them talk to each other was a great, great lesson in just being with people that care about something together. It was a great job. The band wasn't big, but they worked so hard. I remember, listen, when I would pick repertoire for my beginning band, not my beginning, but my first high school band. And I would pick it based on what I knew were good French horn parts. Heck, I didn't know that I should watch out for flutes and clarinets. Horn parts are good. So I probably gave the clarinet some stuff that was probably really hard for them. As a matter of fact, I know it was. So I learned a lot about, if you're going to give something to somebody, you better be able to teach it and you better be able to play it as well. And so I learned my lesson about what to do with students when they couldn't play. I can remember clearly working on a Clifton Williams piece. I can't remember which Clifton Williams piece it is right now. Maybe Symphonic Suite. I'm not sure, but it was one of them. And every day we'd get to this one place and the clarinets would just like crash and burn. I mean, I could not play it. So I told them all, I said, look, it's Friday. I don't want to see a horn in the band room. Everybody take your horn home and practice over the weekend. So the kids all left, and they went home. And after they were gone, and before I went home, I went and looked in the instrument room, and every horn was in the cubbies. I mean, they were still there. And I'm going, well, this is great. That means that Monday is going to be the same as Friday. So I took one of the clarinets home. I had a mouthpiece and I had a reed and all that stuff. And I took that clarinet and that part home, first clarinet part. And I practiced and practiced and practiced. My wife left. My dog went outside and wouldn't come in. I mean, it was awful. But I practiced that horn until I could play it perfectly. So we get back to school on Monday. The horn goes back in its little cubby. We get to that spot, crash, not working. I looked at my first clarinet player. I said, could I see your horn? So she gave me her horn, and I got my reed ready, put that mouthpiece on there, man, and I played it, and I nailed it. I mean, I nailed it, and I handed it back to her, and I said, practice. If they'd had me play one more note, it would have been all over. But I could do the part that I needed them to play. So it motivated them, and it also taught me the difficulty they were having. I do stuff like that with the kids, but that reminds me of one of the things I did when I was working with kids in Weiser.
Sure. They probably respected you much more when they heard you play it.
Well, it's been a thing for me is if you can't produce a good tone, it's pretty tough to tell what the kid's doing that's causing them not to make a good tone.
Absolutely.
So if you can find a way to help them learn through your own work, then sometimes it will be effective and they will learn to play with a better tone. And tone trumps everything. I mean, tone is it. So that was a thing I always had to try to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
but I could play the oboe was hard for me.
How long were you in Weezer?
3 years.
3 years. And you kept moving, I know.
I did. I went to Caldwell.
Mm-hmm. Where's Caldwell?
Caldwell, Idaho. It was a larger school, and I was there for 1 year. And then I went to Capital High School in Boise, and I was there for 3 years. And then I went from Capital to University High School in Spokane, Washington, and I was there for 10.
Okay. I see. So you kind of you guys moved around a lot.
Well, the opportunity to do the things that I've been able to do were offered, and I was able to take them. And I have to tell you, Mark, that each move was wonderful. I mean, I loved the kids, but I wouldn't ever say that one was better than the other. But each offered its unique opportunity. Like I said, I was at Spokane at University High School for 10 years, so it was really a great learning experience. And that's where I did when I was at elementary school choir teacher or vocal music. I always had in the back of my mind that I'd like to conduct Lincolnshire Posey, and I wasn't going to be able to do it with that elementary vocal. But when I got to University High School, I was able to do that, and the opportunity to learn and to learn things. And I'll tell you some things about it. But to experience music with kids that were highly motivated. I had a reunion with those guys too. Maybe 20 years ago. I don't know. But there were so many of them there, and I have so many memories of that. But we played at U High. We played like Lincolnshire. We played La Fiesta, and we did Hindema Symphony. We did all the rep at the time, and then we did the Dahl Sinfonietta. And that was toward the end of my time at U High. And I heard there was a guy who lived not far from my school. The guy's name was Bill Hockheffel. He was band director at Eastern Washington University. He's now at the University of Louisiana in Lafayette. Fine band director and a great alto saxophone player. But Bill went to school at Northwestern, and so we were over at his house. And like I said, this is toward the end of my time, my career at U High. And this is after I'd been a band director for maybe, 17, 18 years, I guess. And was really into learning about repertoire and what repertoire meant to all of us as aspiring musicians. So we were at Bill's house late one night, and he played a recording that John Painter had premiered, and it was a cassette, and it was a dub of the premiere performance of John Painter conducting the Northwestern Wind Ensemble and Child's Garden of Dreams with David Maslenka. And I listened to that, and I thought, what has happened to me? I didn't know what to say. I couldn't say I like it. I couldn't say. I was stunned. I was just petrified because it was something that was deep, deep, deep appeal to the innermost being of who I am. And I knew that if I stayed at teaching high school, that I tried to do that. And I knew I shouldn't for lots of reasons. And that's my opinion. It's been done by high school kids and been done well. But I feel there are some things that attain such a level that you probably ought to have a little life in you experience before you go after that. And that's the way I felt. And so I knew I had to go. And so I had toyed around with the idea of going to college. I didn't really want to. I loved my high school band. I loved what we were doing. I loved the repertoire. But then there was something more, and I needed to go find out what that was. And so that's when I began looking for a college job in earnest. And by the grace of everything that's good, I ended up at the University of Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you that. How do you go from Oklahoma, Intermountain West to Storrs, Connecticut? Now, I was born in Connecticut, so I feel like I can ask this question.
I love Connecticut. I still love Connecticut, and I love those kids. And I'll tell you things about them when we get to it. They're special human beings. But I knew that I had to make it. I knew I had to make some kind of a change. I knew that, and I don't have a doctorate, and pretty tough to get a college job now without it. Having a doctorate doesn't make you better or worse than you were before, but it does have a key that helps you get through the door. And I knew that door was going to shut. And I had actually auditioned for a few colleges and been offered and decided I'm staying with my high school because I really enjoyed it, liked it. But then I had opportunities to stay right there within 30 miles of my home or move 3,000 miles to go to Connecticut when they offered me that job. And Mark, I didn't know anybody in Connecticut. I didn't even know how to spell Connecticut. And it was 3,000 miles away. And it was like, if I go, I've got to take my family and they've got to go through this with me. And how can just saying I've been married 53 years tells you what kind of a person that I'm married to. She deserves more than I could ever give her. But when we went, it's like looking at the abyss and standing right on the edge and going like, okay, I'm here. Let's go. What's down there? What's behind door number 3? I've got to know. And so I got to Connecticut and I was offered that job and I took it because I needed to learn. I needed to find out what I didn't know. And what did I not know? I couldn't tell you. But I went, and thank goodness I did.
And so you were there for 10 years.
Yeah, I was.
Tell me about the program. Tell me about what you did there.
Well, it was, there was a time at Connecticut, I got there and I was 1 year removed from Larry Ratcliffe. You know Larry. Teaches orchestra at Rice now. Fabulous conductor, teacher. And everybody was disappointed because he wasn't there. And so, welcome to UConn, big boy. But Larry, even from a distance, I think Larry went then to Oberlin. I think he was teaching at Oberlin. And so from a distance, Larry helped me get to know people, the right people in Connecticut, and he helped me move on. The kids, it was an undergraduate group and hard workers. I was going to tell you, I did the marching band, the wind ensemble, and the symphonic band. all three. And that was my job. And the guy that hired me there, Dan Patrolak, played at Eastman. He played cornet, principal cornet with Fred Fennell in the first Eastman Wind Ensemble, and he was principal trumpet in the Marine Band, cornet, excuse me. But Dan wasn't chair very long. We went through a few people, and then a woman came to Storrs to be the chair. Her name was Dorothy Payne, and the only thing that I can tell you about Dorothy is everybody in their lifetime should be lucky enough to work with somebody like that. She is absolutely the person that changed my life. She said, you're working too hard. You got too much going on. We're taking everything away. We're going to hire another band director, and you're going to do the wind ensemble, teach conducting, and that's it. And I didn't ask for it. She told me. I mean that's unheard of. So it gave me. She gave me all this opportunity to learn even more. So I was there about 7 years, I guess, and we were doing rep. And so I went to her office one day, and talking, probably asking for money, as band directors do with deans and chairmen. And so our conversation was over, and I was walking out the door, and she says, "By the way, what are you playing in your next concert?" And this is 7 years after I'd been there, and I'd finally worked up enough nerve to do Child's Garden of Dreams. And so that's when we were doing it. And she asked me, I said, "We're doing Child's Garden of Dreams." And she said, "Who wrote it?" And I said, "David Maslanka." And she said, "How would you like to have him here for your rehearsal and your concert?" And I said, How can you do that?" She said, "Well, he was roommates with my husband when they were doctoral students at Michigan State. And he was working and teaching in New York at the time. It's before he went to Montana."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she called him, and he came. And I can't even, I honestly don't, even if I were a poet, I couldn't adequately describe the change in me and my entire being working with David Maslanka. I mean, it was I could go on and on forever about it. But that was, if you want to get right down to it, that decision to go to Connecticut from Washington, that's the reason. One of the reasons, a big reason. Put a star by that reason.
Yeah, sure.
So how can you know what you don't know? But there he was. And boy, did he teach me.
Yeah, he was
hard.
remarkable.
The lessons were hard. We were, I've always loved music, and I've always nurtured the phrase, and I've always wanted it to be beautiful, in tune, in time. And I would do whatever I had to do to make that happen. And so David came to our rehearsals, and we played the first two movements. And he's standing right to my right as I'm looking at my ensemble, like I'm looking at you. And he was moved, deeply moved. And so we got to the third movement, and we played about 3 measures, and he stopped me. He clapped his hands really loud and stopped me. And my heart, I'm going, wait, I'm the band director. Why are you stopping me? And my kid's eyes are as big around as silver dollars. And he said, it's too slow. He said, it's clearly marked. Quarter note equals, I don't know, 180. I can't remember exactly, but it was fast. So it's 16 notes. I mean, fast. And we're going, about like that. And he said, you're going about 120. And I said, as a matter of fact, we're going exactly 120. I mean, I had metronome that thing, so it was not going to be, we're not going to miss any notes, and it's going to be fast. I was going to be right in the pocket. He said, it's too slow. We have to move. We have to go faster. And I said, we can't go faster. If we go faster, we're going to miss a bunch of notes. And he said, So be it. We'll sweep them up after the concert. And I said, you better bring a bushel basket because we're going to miss a lot of them. And my kids, and my heart's pounding, and my kids' eyes, I mean, you can imagine what they're thinking. They've not been through anything like this. Then he said this to me, Mark, and it changed me. It changed me profoundly. He said, don't impose your restrictions on my music. And that hurt. And I saw it in his eyes. I heard him. And I swore that I would never compromise an artist again. Whatever I had to do is what we would do to make it work. I'd tirelessly make it happen. And so it's changed the ways I would read a score. It changed the way I look at a score. And it changed the way I think about music. And that was David Maslenka. I mean, but my relationship with David went on for 30 years, near 30 years, pretty close.
I have a couple thoughts. I just kind of want former theory professor in me has to point out that Dorothy Payne is the author, Koska and Payne, for those of you who use that white theory textbook.
Yes, she is.
Stephen Koska was, of course, at the University of Texas, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. I have
taught out of that book. And
listen, yeah. Did you know her?
I met her briefly, but I didn't really know her. Yeah.
Courageous, passionate, caring, a great human being that would give her whole life to make sure that students had the best opportunity they could have. She gave me her mother was a pianist, and her mother took a piano lesson from Percy Granger, and Granger gave her a picture and inscribed to her. Her name was Dorothy. I have it here in my office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, she gave it to me. She said, I want you to have this.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go.
No, that's okay. So it was Dorothy that started expansion of my mind and my heart. David fully exposed it.
He had a way of getting right to your truth and then telling it to you very directly but kindly.
Because it was his truth. I mean, he was totally human and an artist, and was Mahler. I mean, come on. I mean, how lucky are that we have people that somehow we're on this earth, but in ways that we could never emulate. All we can do is celebrate the fact that they were here.
Yeah,
and
he was
grow
a special man.
from the fact that they were here.
Yeah, he was a special man for sure.
Yeah, unbelievable.
I also think about the tempo you were talking about, and I can just hear his music. It doesn't matter what piece it is, but you can hear that figure going so fast that it's almost like not possible, but yet it's what makes the music. Let
me tell you that when we played at the CBDNA National, I intentionally chose the program for the celebration of people that meant so much to me. We opened that concert at that national convention with a piece written by Brian Balmages called Fanfare Canzonique, and it was written for the trumpet teacher at University of Miami at the time, Gil Johnson, who was principal trumpet of the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Brian's teacher, right?
Pardon me?
Would have been Brian's teacher when Brian was a student there.
It was. Yeah. And Brian, we wanted Gil to conduct this piece that Brian wrote, but Gil died before we went to Minneapolis. But if you recall the album, the Gabrielli album with the 3 brass sections, Gil's right on the front of that. And so Fanfare Canzonique is based on Gabrielli, but it's also the Pines of Rome, the trumpet part off stage that Gil Johnson played. I've got a picture hanging right here of Gil in Philadelphia in the hall playing the offstage trumpet part, Pines of Rome, signed by him. And so I wanted to play that because of Brian and because of Gil. And then I did Child's Garden of Dreams, and I did Urban Requiem by Michael Colgrass. And all those pieces have had major impact, for lack of a better term, on the direction of my being, whatever that may be in terms of a life. But we were working on Child's Garden of Dreams in the pre-concert rehearsal. And man, I'm burning that third movement. I mean, I am burning David. We got through with it, and David looked at me and says, "It's too fast." I said, "Too bad." That's where we are, man.
That album you referred to, that's the one that's Chicago, Cleveland, and Philadelphia?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. Well, that's kind of like a landmark recording.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that was Gil. I mean, he's on the front of that album cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to go look at it.
So Brian wanted to celebrate his teacher, and he did. I mean, at Fanfare Canzonique, I don't know if you know it or not, but it's a fantastic piece. And there's a lot to it. I mean, there's a lot inside the piece, but it was meant for Gil. That's enough for right now.
So what brought you to the Frost School?
I'd like to just not go into a lot of reasons why. It just,
yeah, absolutely.
It just wasn't. I felt I did 2-day audition. The first day was over. I called my wife and said, "This isn't it. We're not coming here." The second day, I met with the dean, Bill Hipp, and the associate dean, a guy by the name of Nick DeCarbo. And I knew that they wanted to have a WIN program. I knew that. I mean, how we were talking earlier about you talk to people and you just know when they're shooting it straight. It was especially, Bill Hipp was a great dean, a great man. Nick DeCarbo was the motivator for the WIN program, and he wanted it very bad. And it's deeply personal, but he let me know without telling me. He let me know in a very powerful way that he wanted this program, this wind and percussion program, to be something strong, not just another program. He wanted something extraordinary, and it moved me to the depths of my heart. And I wanted this job bad because I wanted. Listen, that you know about the jazz band here at Miami. I mean, it's second to none. And my feeling was if they had that, they could have something else as well. And I've never wanted to be the star, but I wanted to be a point on the star. I wanted to share the heat with people around me. So, and I wanted to live in that I wanted every day to be just on fire. I used to tell my students at UM that I enjoyed watching them struggle because it's the struggle that tells me who they are. If it's easy, anybody can do it, but this is not easy, man. This is hard stuff. So I love that. I miss that part of it. But I wanted the job, and they offered it to me, and it proved to be everything and more. I mean, how could I know what I didn't know? I came, and wow, what they provided for their students. And I just got to go along for the ride. I can remember in the final days of my last year or so. I mean, we'd go play for like Florida music educators and stuff. And I'd talk to the kids after concerts, and I tell them, look, I'm very well aware there's only one guy in this room that doesn't deserve being here, and that's me. But I'll take it. I've got the job. You don't, so I'm hanging in there. I mean, I was so lucky to be in the presence of people that played like they did. Wow. I mean, just unbelievable. And to give so freely of who they were. It was unreal. It was just unreal.
Yeah, no doubt. How long were you at I know you were there for
22 years.
22 years?
22
when
years.
Did you, are you still in Miami now? I know you're not.
I live in Fort Lauderdale, where I lived when I was teaching. I didn't. My children were babies. Garrett was very, very young. Kristen was young, and Miami scared me. I'm a small town guy, man. I grew up in Sapulpa, and I didn't want Miami scared me. So I came north, and I looked, and I found a small town, Cooper City, that I liked, and we built a house, and we've been here ever since. And I don't know if I told you earlier or not, but my two grandchildren boys live right across the street from me. My granddaughter's about 9 miles north of me. And so we've been here the whole time. But I moved up here because of the schools and because it was a smaller town. I felt safer with my family. And Miami's good. There wasn't any problem with Miami. It's just me.
Yeah. The Frost School it's always impressed me, even as a Florida State guy.
Well, Florida State's always impressed me. Jim Croft, I've heard you talk about Jim with other people. Jim was a very special man. Jim taught me. He taught me so much. We were talking after a workshop or something one day, and he said, you know, band is boring, and man, it made me mad. I mean, I was mad. I mean, it's a thing. I mean, how can you tell me that? Don't do that. But what he was telling me was, and this is a while ago, and he was totally into repertoire. He was talking to me about repertoire and things we needed to do. So I love Jim. I went to his memorial when they had it, and I respected him, and to this day I respect him. He was a good man. Good man. But my dear friend Rick Clary is there now, and I love Rick. I mean, I can't tell you. I've known Rick since he was a baby. So Florida State's okay with me.
No, I was fortunate enough. I didn't quite realize what I had at the time, but you know, that's the problem with youth. It's a problem with youth, right? I had one semester in Jim's conducting class, and you know, I appreciate the difficult situations that he intentionally put me in because I grew from them.
Right. Oh yeah, and he was good at that.
Oh, he was very good at that. But he was also very encouraging too. Like, he always knew when to say the thing that you needed to hear when it seemed like you were almost about to fly apart.
Yeah. Well, he was. I mean, what are you going to say? He's one of the best.
Yeah. But what I was going to say about Frost is it's always impressed me how much they put into the program there. They really invest resources into the Frost School in a way that's on par with some of the great universities in the country. It's always impressed me.
Absolutely. It is a great school.
It is. My wife is very fortunate to play with the Eastern Music Festival Orchestra, and so we've got to know Gerard Schwartz. Have you met him?
Yeah. I've done all state groups with him.
Jerry's
he's a real educator, and he's tearing it up down there too.
I'm sure he is. He's a force of nature as far as like fundraising and that kind of thing goes.
Yeah.
I mean, the what he's done for the festival, and man, as a trumpet player, oof.
Yeah.
You want to talk about landmark recordings? His cornet recordings from the early 70s.
Yeah.
That is like the best trumpet album ever recorded, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a force of nature. I like Jerry a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
Remember your first term of teaching? Learning all the skills that you don't get taught in music school? Managing a transitioning culture in your classroom? Finding out that you have to teach guitar this term? During those early years, we found out that leaning on a community of music educators was important, not only for building that knowledge in ourselves, but also maintaining enough sanity to serve the students right in front of us. Amused is a podcast centered around a community of music teachers. Between the four of us, we teach choir, band, orchestra, general, jazz, and marching band at the elementary through collegiate levels. We certainly don't have all the answers, but you're welcome to listen in while we try to find them. Join us while we work through the challenges of music teaching and celebrate the joy of bringing music making into the lives of young people. In each episode, you'll hear stories, both good and bad, about that week of teaching, and we'll try and tackle an issue that one of us is struggling with. Something we're all taught is that music brings people together, but being the only teacher in your subject at a site can be really isolating. We think everyone ought to be a part of a community, and you're welcome to come join ours. Episodes come out on Wednesdays during the school year, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts and at amusedcast.org.
All right, so at the end of every interview, I don't do a lightning round because I ask these questions that are impossibly long to answer. So I call it the enlightened round. And so the first of these questions that I ask each guest is, where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
Having been a high school band director, I understand the competitive aspect of especially marching band. But my wife was cleaning some things the other day, not last night, but the night before, and she brought in these books with mold and dust on them, and she handed them to me. Says, "You want to keep these?" And I looked at it. It was a drill that I had written when I was at the University High School. And I remembered the hours of drawing those and putting them together. And so the cost to my students and my students' parents was zero. But today, and of course, that drill would not hold mustard with some of the things I see. I don't see a lot, but I do see some. And I worry, I concern myself with the amount of money that's being spent, because that money might wisely be spent another way. I'm not going to preach to anybody. I mean, that's just, when I was a high school band director in a long time ago, and I wrote the music for my groups, and I wrote the drill. The only thing I didn't do was the color guard and the drums. And the reason I didn't is because I couldn't. I needed somebody to help me. And I had kids who had graduated who had helped me. So the cost of it was not prohibitive. It did cost money. But we didn't take band time to do it. We did that on our evening rehearsal. That's my little bit of a soapbox. I guess if there were enough of us here, we had a round table, it would get a little bit more. It'd get more heated than that. But that's enough for me for the moment. In concert playing, I don't think there's any place for competition. I'm sometimes even troubled by the idea that the only way that you can achieve success is to get a one, because I don't believe that's true. It depends. I mean, you might get a one, and inside of you, when it's over, feel horrible because you didn't do the kind of job teaching that you should have done, or whatever. Art and the expression of art is something we teach to the best of our ability every day. And it is not for someone else to say, yes, you did, or no, you didn't. If you're committed to something like that, then you know already whether you've done what you need to do. And so I'm not much in favor of adjudicated festivals. I'm not.
Yeah, my peak experiences from high school band as a performer never had to do with festival. They had to do with rehearsals and concerts
Absolutely.
for friends and family. Those are the moments I remember. I remember going to festivals, but I don't remember the performances.
Well, people have a tendency to teach the way they were taught. And that's the way I was taught. I mean, we go to contests, we're going to get a one. And I love Mr. Bright as much as I love any man. And he wasn't wrong. It wasn't a question. But as I heard Manzoni Requiem and so many composers and so many kids, I realize how hard you have to work just to play a piece that is meaningful to someone, that can touch somebody's heart. And that's really what it's about. It really is, honestly. I don't mind going to a festival and listening to a group, but I just don't think it needs to be adjudicated for a number.
Yeah, I like adjudicated festivals where you have a clinician and you have comments, but I don't think scores need to be given out.
I think there's place for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great learning experience. I would love to take my kids to a non-adjudicated clinician festival. I think, because they're little, they're not going to compete, but it would be great to have them here. Some of my colleagues in the area who have accomplished great things, telling them the same things I'm telling them.
Well, at some point in a general discussion, it would be possible to talk about competition and its far-ranging impact on what we do and the way we go about doing it. But for now, it's enough that we just have to be careful with it. Art is something we try to create or recreate, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, and every teacher in every situation is different. You can't make blanket statements about
that's exactly right. And I'm the kind of guy that if a person can do what they do and go to sleep at night and not worry about what they're doing, then that's their thing. I'd probably have a discussion with them, but that's okay. That's okay.
All right, Gary, this is the big question that I ask everyone. And obviously it's impossible to answer, as I've learned over 190 some of these interviews. But what are the challenges facing music education, and how do we best meet them?
There's not a time in our lives, your life or my life, in working, that there haven't been challenges. How many times did I hear, or have you heard, or other people heard, when they go through the school day, that we're going to cut something and it's going to be the band. We're going to cut music. We're going to cut the band because we need to do other things. So those are major challenges. I mean, they're not, and they're as significant as the things that we're looking at now. With COVID, we've got to, in many places, we have to start again. But we've had to start again before. So these are not things that we're afraid of. It's the need to go out and to be the best teacher and the best town crier that we possibly can be, and build it back up and to keep it going. When people would tell me we're going to cut the band, I'd say I'd work harder, make it more tough, make it more difficult. I'd do everything. I'd see whoever I needed to see. And this, as you said at the very beginning of our talk a while ago, this is not an easy thing to do. It's just not easy. I mean, the homework, how do you pick the right repertoire? How do you know why the saxophone isn't sounding correct? And those kinds of things take forever for us to learn, and they're not easy to learn, but we can overcome the problems. Our country, our world is in more turmoil now, but I think a lot of that is because we know more. We're given the opportunity to know more about it. And what kind of situation must Truman have felt when he had to make some of the decisions he made? Those were horrible, horrible times, and it's still difficult today. But good people will work hard and dedicate themselves to helping things be right. And that's why we need music. That's why we need art. It's not easy. We just have to keep working. But I honestly don't think it's a lot different now than it was then.
Mm-hmm. We talked about David Maslenka. What did he always say? Do the work?
Show up.
Show up. That's right. Show up.
Yeah.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is my favorite question in the whole interview. And this is, if I had a time machine and I could take you back to your high school graduation, what advice would you give yourself?
Youth has a tendency to want to do things fast, and it's not going to happen. Chill out and work hard and let each day take care of itself. And then it will reveal the work at the end of your day or at the end of your month or at the end of your year. But you're not going to do a year's worth of work in one day. And when you're young, that's what you want, especially when you're impressionable. You hear somebody else, I want my band to sound like that. Well, that's just completely crazy. If it sounds like them, then all you're doing is mimicking what somebody else did, and you're not allowing your own expression to come forward, your own thinking, your own heart, the way you hear. Slow down and let the learning happen, and know that you're in for it for the long haul, and know that it's not going to come fast.
So, Gary, I don't ask this question to be morbid. I ask it to kind of figure out what is most meaningful to you, as opposed to getting a political answer that some would give, if you know what I mean. And the question is, if you had a choice, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you'd want to conduct?
That's hard. I mean, there's so many possibilities. There's a piece of me that I'd like to hear Air for Band played by a middle school band.
How interesting.
Well, I mean, I remember working on that piece and knowing how it felt to teach it to kids who wanted to play it. I mean, that was pretty great. I mean, was it Mahler 1? No. But it was great.
Yeah, I think that piece gets maligned, and I think it's unfair. I think it's a terrific middle school piece.
I mean, what can you teach? I mean, Hugh Stewart used to write things and arrange things for kids to play that you could teach phrasing, I mean, it never end. I mean, you could do it over and over, and the kids, you could teach them so much more than notes.
Absolutely.
Without ever having to preach at them about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When I was at Miami, my good friend Tom Sleeper, who was the orchestra conductor at the time, wanted to go on sabbatical, and he asked me if I would conduct the orchestra on a concert, and I said no. And he said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Because I know about the repertoire, but I don't know about the ensemble." He said, "Well, I'll give you 2 weeks, and if you think you'd like to do it, it would save me. I could go on sabbatical because I can't go unless you do it." Of course, that was it. So 2 weeks later, I thought about it, and I went to him and said, "Yeah, I'll do it." He says, "Okay, you know what you want to play?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to do The Rite of Spring." And he let me do it, and the string faculty let me do it. And you pick up score. Tom gave me the copy of the manuscript. I've got the manuscript here in the house, and every day I'd walk into that rehearsal with that score, and I'd go like, "Man, I'm carrying this guy with me." I don't know if that'd be the last thing I'd want to hear. I mean, but there's just so much out there that's so beautiful. I hope that when it's my time to hear the last piece, I hope I've got enough time to listen to a lot, because there's a lot I'd like to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. It's, now you make me want to go listen to Air for Band and Rite of Spring again.
Well, I'll tell you one final story about something. So I was in college in Oklahoma, and we were rehearsing La Fiesta Mexicana, and we had just done the first 3 chords of the second movement. Those massive chords.
Oh yeah.
And the guy who played piano in the ensemble, who wasn't playing on that piece, came in, and he stopped Mr. Sisson, and he said, "The president's just been shot." It was the day Kennedy was shot.
Oof.
That awful day in November.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about that day, and when I think about John F. Kennedy, I think about the 3 chords of La Fiesta Mexicana in the second movement. And it's pretty powerful image. So, Mark, I can't cut it down to one, but there's a lot, and for a lot of different reasons.
All right. So Gary, is there anything that you want to share or promote, or perhaps you mentioned earlier that you might want to kind of have some closing thoughts?
Well, I think I covered it a little bit earlier. As a band director who I tried in my career to teach as well as I could, but I just think that for young people, I think the thing I mentioned earlier was to just slow down a little bit and look around and see the beauty that's in the trees and see the beauty that's in their lives, and in their family and in the people that they love, and it will enhance the beauty of their music that much more. I think, and I have no advertising.
All right, Gary, how can people get in touch with you?
ggreen1499 at AOL.com. Yes, I still have AOL.
That's okay.
That's from the beginning days. I've had it all this time, but that's the easiest way.
I mean, I bet you I still have it if I could only remember that password.
Right.
Gary, I want to thank you so much for your time and your patience while we got connected technically. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm sorry that I wasn't more ready to engage quicker.
That's okay. I mean, there's always a few hiccups when it comes to technology.
Right.
I expect it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to think about the things that I love very much and and that I've experienced in my life. So I hope that in some way that it might be of help to somebody. I hope.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be.
Thanks, Mark.